Hello, everybody. I am already seeing the chat talk about how I'm late for my own show all the time, and it's accurate. I don't appreciate it, but I'm not going to call you a liar. I am very happy to be doing the show today. This is coming from my under construction little office over here. So if anyone sees me glancing to the side while all of this is going on, it's because I have a little giant king combo holding my notes over here. Um, but all things aside, even though the environment I'm surrounded in is a little dilapidated and horrible, I am very happy to be here because the author of the book that we're talking to tonight, amazing book. I feel like it flies under the radar a lot. Everyone who's read it loves it. I know in Willow Wraith, Bill read it, and me and him were in our little chat talking back and forth to each other. And it's amazing, and it should get a lot more credit than I am currently seeing. So hopefully that is going to be the case going forwards. And I'm going to bring him on right now. The author of ShadowBane, Mr. Cal Logan.
Hello. Thanks for having me, man.
Oh, of course. This is my pleasure. Like I said, it's always very easy to give intro speeches like that when I actually believe what I'm saying. And I know Bill can vouch for me whenever he pops in, but this book was fantastic. And I loved it. So I just want to give you credit for that right off the bat.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's you mentioned it kind of flies under the radar, and I feel like that too. But I'm glad that, like you mentioned, that people who have read it have really enjoyed it. So, I'm happy.
Every time I see it posted, it's like, oh my god, ShadowBane fucking ruled. Like I saw Paul Z commented on it on one of the social media posts a little bit earlier. I think I put it on. There's a really good Reddit subreddit that just got made, Grimdark Epic Fantasy. So every week I post the links over there, and people saw this one today and were like, oh, ShadowBane was sick. And it's like,
really?
You don't saying it, but there was like one or two people who were just like, yeah, I loved that. So that was nice to see.
Oh, that's awesome. I am familiar with the first, just the regular Grimdark Fantasy subreddit. Mm-hmm. But I didn't realize there was kind of like a newer one that started up.
Yeah, just started up. I think there's like 2,000 people in it or so, but it's like getting big, which is nice. And one of the things that I didn't realize when it's actually funny because I saw you post about ShadowBane, I think last October maybe or November, and I got it for the holidays, and it's been sitting on my shelf. And this book was actually one of the ones where it made me go, I'm going to stop reading things that I'm just trying to rush and read because, like, not to say anything bad, but like the Dragonbone Chair and, all of these older series where it's like, you gotta read them. And it was like, ShadowBane's looking at me from the shelf over here. And, like, picking this one up was one of those where it was like, I'm reading this for me. And I am so stoked that I did, because it's like, you're getting in on the ground floor of what's going to be excellent. But yes, going back to the Reddit, the one thing I didn't realize when I picked up the book, how grim this actually was. It is brutal. Was that the intent going in, and what you wanted to have done with it?
Yeah, I real quick, I want to say hi to the folks who just jumped in, and well, yeah, Alex, Bill, Tim, Chris, hi everyone. Thanks for joining up. But to answer your question, yeah, I knew this was going to be pretty dark right off the bat. I think there were moments where I still surprised myself a little bit, where the story just went in a direction that I was like, all right, well, I kind of have to write it this way because it fits the characters best. And then I'd get into it and finish the chapter, and then I'd sit back and be like, Jesus, dude, like, so that, yeah, but I knew it was going to be pretty brutal, just based on, feudal Japan was a very brutal, hostile world, very strict customs, very unforgiving culture and society, and their mythology is extremely dark. Like, their mythology goes very hard. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I had to do justice to that in order to portray those aspects authentically, and I feel like it just fit the overall like vibe and aesthetic. So I wasn't going to shy away from that.
And it was a very well done decision because I think the authenticity came across in the writing, where every page was just you could tell like the amount of detail and attention that was painstakingly put into it. I felt like, I think I told Bill along the way, I was like, the descriptions that I'm reading are so visceral, and it was what made the book. Like, I thought everything was great. I thought the plot was great, the characters, we'll get into it, but just reading page after page was just like, there's bangers on every line. And it wasn't like, most of the time you hear that and it's like, oh, an amazing quote or something like that. But this just had me hook, line, and sinker the entire time. But what I wanted to ask, just starting off with, what made you want to go with that background, that feudal Japanese influence?
So the main thing, I had a premise first. The initial premise, and it came out like a nightmare I had, was a guy and his dog hunting demons, right? And that eventually changed into like, the twins, because I kind of wanted to play with the idea of like diverging paths, and like prophecy and everything. The dog, became an 800-pound Siberian tiger. And then I was looking at kind of like different explorations of demonology and mythology. And I wanted to stay away from like a Western or Judeo-Christian iteration, just because I didn't feel like it had the backbone. Like, the demons are kind of more like spiritual or like ethereal, as opposed to legitimate things walking around that you can fight. And in Japanese mythology, there's hundreds and hundreds of yokai. So it was just such a rich and diverse pool to pull from. And I'd already been interested in feudal Japan and like samurai culture. So, after a little bit of research, I was like, okay, this is it. Like it clicked in my head. It felt right.
It went really well, and it was kind of funny because the book I read maybe like 3 months before yours, I read Blood of the Kami, and that was a similar aspect with like a demon hunter in Japan, and so I was a little familiar with the creatures that we see in this one, but I feel like it wasn't like YA or anything, but it was definitely more of like an adventure story, whereas this was nitty gritty, like you're in the fucking trenches dealing with it. So I really enjoyed that. And like you said, you mentioned the twins, how you wanted to explore like prophecy and the divergent paths that each of them take. I thought one of the really interesting things about them was that they're kind of the last two of that lineage who have the divine bloodline. So what made you want to just have those two primarily with those abilities and not anyone else in this world?
One, I wanted the main characters to be, a little special. But also, that lineage is a burden. And so as strong as they are, and because of the kind of crisis point that they're at, both like within the kingdoms, and then also with, the advent of the demons and the rise of this cult that's bringing them back. I wanted them to feel the weight of that legacy, like that burden. And they both feel it in different ways. Shore is a little more proud of her bloodline. Jin seems a little more apathetic, but he still feels that strong sense of duty that he has to do something about this, even if he doesn't necessarily want to. It's like a compulsion for him. So I think just having them be this kind of like disgraced, like last gasp of this like once glorious bloodline, just helps kind of like color their backstory in, and gives them some layers to work through, as far as their worldview and like how they process that legacy and what's to come of it.
And I liked the dichotomy that both of them had, because like you said, Shura was a little more trying to not assimilate, but work with the nobles and the royalists and everybody like that. Whereas Jin is just, I am what I am. You guys need me. Fuck off. Like, just leave me alone. Get it done. I thought the two characters were great. I'm going to get to Jin in a little bit, but I thought Shura was actually very underrated. When you go and you look and you see a lot of the reviews, it's, Fang is incredible, the 800-pound tiger, and he is very good boy. Wallace, a great character. I'm going to get to him in a little bit also, and Jin is amazing. But I thought that she had almost more of a challenging storyline to, kind of walk that line of her twin brother who she loves and would kill and has killed thousands of times for, and also what she wants. So how did you go about kind of towing that line of being as brutal as she needs to be and also trying to work with powers who they really didn't necessarily want to?
It's a great question. She was actually pretty underdeveloped until like my third draft, and I realized it wasn't working, and she needed some layers. So I think she was actually like really nice at first, and she was actually like a little too much of a goody good, and it like didn't really fit. And so that's when I started to develop some better conflict with her, between her and Jin at times. She can be a little sneaky and underhanded at times, and usually because she needs to get something done, and her head's in the right place. But it's kind of it like I said, toes that line of like, when are you justified in trying to like get someone on your side for something versus when are you manipulating people? So I kind of colored in like her darker edges a little later in the story. And that was what actually let me drive a lot of the conflict between her and Jin, because they're both ruthless but in different ways, and each one kind of disapproves of the other's brand of ruthlessness or doesn't understand it. And like she can be sneaky and kind of ruthless with like her words, and how she plays the politics and tries to involve the kings and everything, because they need them, and she's practical enough to realize that. Whereas Jin is just physically ruthless, and which is kind of jarring for her at times, even as tough as she is. Um, so I'm glad that I was able to add the elements that I wanted to her personality. Otherwise, I don't think she would have worked. And if one of the twins doesn't work, they both don't work.
Yes, that's exactly right. Because a lot of the arguments that they have it was like making my hair stand up, where I was like, oh my God, I feel like I was pulling back the curtain of like, because they were so well done that it was like, you guys should be having this argument in private. And then it's like, oh, I'm reading. But it was, like you said, where one of them didn't have all of those personality traits to it, it wouldn't have hit as hard on the other one. Because when you're doing it and reading it, you start to connect with both of them, and you see both points. And it's like, even the alternating POVs, you did such a good job where even if you're reading Jin's, like in his head, you're agreeing with her because you know what's going on. And then it flips and you're just like, both of them make sense. Why can't they oh yeah, that's why they can't get along. But there was so much going on in there. I thought that was really well done. And like I said, I was again, sorry, I feel like it's rude to just completely turn, but it's a ladder. Like I'm not that tall, so I have to look up that way.
That's fine.
But yes, like I said, I did want to get to Jin because Jin has some of those character elements where it's almost Geralt and that type of vibe, where it's like demon hunter, mean guy, ruthless, but he is much more emotionally vulnerable than a lot of those types of characters that we've seen. So how did you go about fleshing him out where he can be mean? First off, very proud of the usage of the word cunt, because it gets dropped a lot. You don't see it that often, especially from a dude from Chicago area. So super stoked about that. That's usually a British thing. Are you happy to take that back from them?
Yeah, it's time we reclaimed that.
Hey,
Thomas, he just hopped in. I'm gonna make a T-shirt that says "Reclaim the cunt."
We're taking it back.
Yeah, see how fast I got canceled. Yeah, he. Sorry. So, what was the question with Jin?
I almost forgot because we started talking about that. I think it was how did you make him so much more emotionally vulnerable than the usual gruff killer characters that we see?
So he actually started off too dark and too gruff, and a couple of my betas pointed it out, and so it was kind of flip side of shore. Like I originally wrote them as kind of just like good cop, bad cop, and I fleshed them out and rounded them out really well. I think I needed the initial kind of like rough draft version of each of them just to figure out like their core traits, but then I was like, okay, now how do I add some shading? So that was with him where I rounded him out. The Echo subplot got a lot bigger, because I think that was a good avenue to explore like his tender side, when he's alone with someone that he loves and trusts. And then, so that's like the romantic element, which kind of fosters like the like protective, like romantic side of him, which obviously he's never been able to indulge before, like ever. Um, it's funny. There's a small like moment in the second book where someone's asking him like, your childhood couldn't have been all that bad. Like, tell me a story. And the story is based about him like getting the shit kicked out of him in training, being like whipped and beaten, but like later like a serving girl like smiles at him for a second. He's like, that was really nice. And it's like, oh, that's a story that like you got smiled at once, and that's like a thing you remember. So with Aiko, he finally has an opportunity to explore that side of himself. And then obviously with Wallace, it's like like older, younger brother dynamic. And I wanted to, I still wanted to start off with him being that like gruff, like taciturn type of character at first, and then just peel back the layers on him. Because this is also something that he's kind of discovering and exploring with himself for the first time. So it's, I feel it's just a natural evolution of his character.
Nice. And bringing up Wallace, I feel like again I've gotten very good at not spoiling anything, so I'm going to keep it that way. But just to start off, what made you want to have him there as kind of not a sidekick, but like a squire type character? Because he's much more than a sidekick. You really start to emotionally connect with Wallace, probably more than either of the other two, because he's more of the everyman. But what made you want to have that third character in there?
I feel like he just needed you needed another third character to both serve as a foil for each of the two main characters. I think his relationship with Jin gets a little more screen time, and it's the easier one to cling on to. But he has a good relationship with Shura too, and like in the beginning, like Jin's kind of mean to Wallace, and Shura sticks up for him, and has that like protective like sisterly element about him. And so I knew I needed like one more party to give them just some texture to play off of. It just was able to introduce or explore the conflict then through Wallace as well, because there's times when he is caught between them.
Mm-hmm. I feel like when he was caught between them was almost some of the kind of the best writing, because it was giving us the backstory on each of the characters by Wallace talking to the other person, like where it would be, he doesn't mean to be mean to you. It was, think about this. And it was a good way to like showcase the past of each of the main two characters while also not being info dumpy. So if that was one of the goals on there, that was very well done, because you learn so much along the way of him getting told, what was going on before he got there, that it, kind of comes across to the reader. So that was really well done as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it opened up some options for like narratively, just how to convey certain information. Like one of the instances where you brought up where he's kind of like still learning about the two main characters, like a little bit at a time. One of my favorite scenes that I introduced, or like little tidbits in a scene that I introduced way later, was when he's talking about Jin training him how to fight, and then Shura kind of recollects like, oh yeah, that's how he taught me, forms. And then Wallace just being innocent asks Jin, he's like, oh, is that how you learned forms? And Shura just stops and like don't go there with him, and it's and then you as the reader learn why that's such a sore topic for Jin.
It was very well done, laying the breadcrumbs like that. And the fourth character in the party, Fang, who obviously I said good boy. How did he turn into an 800-pound tiger from your dream? That was just the natural evolution of it.
So I had a nightmare where like we were being attacked by demons in our house, right? And I woke up and I have a 13-pound dachshund, and he thinks he's like 100 pounds, right? He thinks he's a big dog, but he's the size of a football. And he started like barking and howling and stuff. And then, once I like went back to sleep, he like sat on my chest. I was like staring at the door, and I thought that was really weird because he's never done that before or since. And so that kind of was like the whole like, oh, can animals sense like spirits or whatever? I know he was just trying to comfort me, but like it was it like sparked a thought. So that was the original idea, like a guy and his dog hunting demons. And then I'm like looking at Rizzo and I'm like, well, he's not hurting anything. Like let's we need a bigger, more badass creature. And then I end up going with the tiger, not only because it's one of my favorite animals, but I just felt like it fit the like aesthetic of like ancient Japan a little better, or
Mhm.
feudal Japan, I should say. Um, so I don't think like dogs were not as much of a part of the culture there um, as they were in like Europe at the time. Um, and actually, it fits part of um, like some mythology stuff. So I thought that was cool too.
Yeah,
Like,
and he worked out well. And again, no spoilers or anything. He is a great character to have along the way. Again, um, it's kind of like unique in his way because I was gonna also ask the kind of animal companion. Yeah, you see it a lot more now, where it's like, especially after like maybe you just kind of not you, I mean the royal you, but with the dire wolves of Game of Thrones. Another book, The Hunter, has Strider. There's a lot of those now, but somehow he felt very unique. Did you kind of put not as much time, obviously, but he was like very carefully crafted as a character as well. So was that kind of something you wanted to do along the way, where it wasn't just, yeah, this is a tiger, he's gonna eat some demons, but he had his own personality and went along well with the rest of the three of them?
yeah, I tried to give him some nonverbal communication, and uh, the moment, like the little moments where, for example, he turns around and like glares at Jin, and it's kind of the like you're being an asshole stare.
Mhm.
It's like my dog judges me sometimes when I'm like if I'm playing video games and I freak out, he looks at me just like you okay, man? And so I kind of use moments like that where animals can communicate with you even if they can't speak, and so I tried to do that, um, and and I try to insinuate that he is a very very intelligent creature, and so I think that also opened up some possibilities that allowed me to kind of anthropomorphize him slightly, which is makes it easier to write the character and make him a little more endearing.
Yeah, for sure. It came across that way because you're kind of emotionally as connected to him as any of the others. And I'm going to leave it at that with the main four of them. I wanted to pivot because when you were talking about video games, obviously, big video game guy. Are you like a kind of just as big a video gamer as you are a reader, that type of thing?
I used to be. I don't play so much anymore. It's just a timing thing. I realized that like if I play video games as much as I want to, I'll write a third as much as I want to. So the last game I played was Elden Ring. I probably dumped about 200 and probably 300 hours into that in like a year. And
Mhm.
I looked back and I was like, oh, that's like an entire draft or two of a book. So I was like, I can't do that again. So, but I grew up playing a ton of video games.
Is a person I mentioned it in here. I think last time I am terrible at Elden Ring. I got duped, where I got told that was like the more accessible Dark Souls game, and I didn't realize that that only works when you are a diehard like Dark Souls fanatic. You guys all probably were like, oh yeah, this is fun, this is easy. I was getting fucking killed constantly. Um, I am just not a fan of it. But
It
were
was
there
my first Souls game too, and it was a rude awakening for me.
Yeah, but you put 250 hours in, so obviously you got the hang of it.
Yeah, but it took a minute, and I'm dumb and stubborn.
I mean, I'm dumb and stubborn too, and I just went back to Madden. I was like, if I'm gonna lose at something, it's gonna be as the Jets in a video game form as well. Um, did are you? I know we were talking a little bit earlier, and you are outside of Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Bears.
Yep. Unfortunately.
So do you think it's kind of just grim, dark, and like ingrained in us at this point?
Yeah, just like my sports fandom has just made me enjoy pain and misery. So it's just my default state of being.
I feel like there's nowhere to go but up. You would figure some people who have to deal with these sports teams and all of this stuff on the outside, they would write some kind of like epic fantasy with hope at the end. But I really guess it goes to show just how devastating these teams are to mental health. Because
Yeah,
it's like I connect with the
yeah.
grimdark stories. I'm like, it's fucking brutal.
It's like my team sucks. There's no hope. They're not going to win, but I'm still going to turn on TV and root for them. Like I have no other choice. So it's like there's hope in like its own weird, like twisted way.
Are you? I saw Cubs come up there. Are you Cubs or White Sox?
Oh, definitely Cubs. I mean, our dog's named after their Cubs player who just retired,
Oh
Anthony
yeah, that's
Rizzo.
right. Mhm.
Um, and so that's my wife is definitely the bigger Cubs fan. Her uncle has season tickets. They're huge Cubs fans, and we started dating a couple of years before they won the World Series. So I was kind of a bandwagoner for that.
Mhm.
But I was a little more into the Bears than I was the Cubs, and then I've grown to just appreciate the Bears more like over the last 10 years. You know, they've not been good.
Yeah, you guys have stretches, but eh, it's hard. It sucks. But the one good thing for both of us, I'm in New York, you're Chicago, the music scene, Chicago music. You guys have some great venues there. I've been there to Soldier Field actually. Um, but when I was there, I saw the corpses of the Grateful Dead still playing on stage. Um, and we were talking earlier. You're a big metal guy.
Oh yeah,
What's the big festival over there? Is that Riot Fest that used to be there every year?
yeah. Riot Fest is hit or miss for me because it definitely has its roots in like punk, and when it leans into that, and my wife's a big punk fan, so like we'll do that. Um, we usually go like on one day, maybe like every other year, where there's a day that just like has a bunch of bands we like. But unfortunately, there's a lot of kind of like poppy stuff that comes into the lineups nowadays. Same as like Lollapalooza used to be like rock and grunge, and now it's all like rap, rap, hip hop, and pop, and and like EDM and stuff like that. And like if you like that stuff, fine, but it's just not for us. So we actually do the big metal festivals that are out in like Columbus or Kentucky. That's where like Alice in Chains and like Corn and Linkin Park are headlining. That's much more our speed.
Oh, for sure. Corn is very underrated, which is weird to say. I feel like Corn kind of got lumped in, especially after like all those Woodstock documentaries came out, and it was like that Limp Bizkit. First off, Limp Bizkit's awesome, and I'm not gonna stand for the hate anymore because kind of looking back at it, it was like, is it rose tinted glasses or did they actually rule? And they were great, but I haven't seen any of those guys. Which now we're just pivoting. But if you were to pick like one of your more favorite concerts in the last couple of years, who would that be?
Like a single show.
Single show, festival, anything.
The most recent big festival we went to was called Sonic Temple, and that was in May. And so we saw Linkin Park with Emily Armstrong, the new singer, and they were great. Corn headlined. I've seen Corn like 10 times.
Nice.
So and kind of like you were saying, they're actually like they're just elite professional musicians at this point. They've been doing it for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell, and they've shed a lot of the cringy like break stuff and hurt each other type of attitude. I saw them last year also, and during that show, like people were getting hurt, and they stopped the show and they put up banners. They're like, "We'll come back out when you're being safe. Obey the medical personnel. Like everyone back up 30 steps or whatever." And
Wow.
like, and they got the people out who were hurt. No one got actually hurt, and it was nice to see the band just take control and be like, "Hey, like we're a wild band, but like you're not there to actually beat the shit out of each other."
Yeah.
They were just like super, and then they just like got back on stage. The whole thing took like 15 minutes, and they got back on stage and like had a great show. So they were there, and then like I Prevail played. We saw some newer metal bands like Invent Animate and Era that played at like 2, and there's no one in the crowd. I saw this band Trust Company, which I've been a fan of since high school, and they broke up like pretty early on, so I never had a chance to see them before. They played like almost the whole first album. So just a lot of good bands I got off my bucket list, new bands I wanted to check out, and then like classic bands that I love seeing. That like all happened at the same festival.
Nice. Yeah, I'm gonna have to definitely message you on the side because I'm always looking for new music. And I was a big jam band electronic guy, and then last night I saw Ailstorm, who is a band where they just sing about being pirates, and this other band Glory Hammer, and I guess they're both power metal, but Glory Hammer is like sci-fi themed, and it's more just like fun. But it was a good time.
Yeah.
But it was just funny to see like storylines, like in between songs, they're just like, and then, and it was like, a couple sentences, and then into the next song, it was like a running theme of a set list.
I can see also for a certain type of like book or story or setting, you could just like put that on repeat and just run with it.
Mm-hmm. which is like what I was going to ask, because there's a lot of people who, take things different ways, and especially the way that this book was constructed. you know Obviously most of them have start at A and go to B, end up at C, but this book, the kind of peaks and flows and everything that went through it, it reminded me of a perfectly constructed set list, because there was points where, the action died down and it was, a little bit of a backstory, and then things would pivot and it went into backdoor politics, and then, they're under attack by the cult, and it really was like a very fun journey to go on. Did you, there's always the people who have an outline or just write it as they go. Which of those are you? Which type are you?
I do a loose outline. I tend to know my beginning, ending, and major anchor points. And then I, like there might be a point where there was like 4 fight scenes in a row, and I'm like, this is way too quickly paced. Like I gotta slow it down. And then, so I write in some character moments, and I try to find a way to do that where it still is relevant to the plot and still affects it, but just it's just like weaving stuff in until it feels like it ebbs and flows at the pace you want it to. And then, I mean, I think I did like 5 or 6 drafts. I went over it a lot. I wish I could say that I just winged it and like that's what came out, but no, there was a lot of like me reading it and being like, oh, this sucks. All right, how do I fix this?
It's
good
funny.
writing is rewriting.
Yeah, it's very funny to hear all of you guys, especially. I'm not an author, but it's funny to hear all of you guys behind the scenes talk about that, where it's just like, oh yeah, I wrote like 500 words. They're all terrible. And I was like, whoa. It's very funny to hear that from you guys. And then it's like that revision aspect of things.
Yeah, it's kind of a joke. It's it's just funny. It's fun to be self-deprecating, but it's also kind of true. There's definitely times when I've read a chapter and been like, what the fuck was I thinking? Like, but then but
one of my other favorite questions that I like asking, and it's because, like I said at the very beginning, the descriptions and story worked so well in this. When you go back and look at a revision, well, I guess first up, when you write something, do you know as soon as it's typed out, fuck yeah, like I just nailed that, or at least like in your head, that's what you want there? Or does it take like a revision or an ARC reader or beta reader to point it out to really kind of collect your flowers?
When something works, I know it works. For example, the Fire Village scene was a late addition. I drafted that in one fell swoop. Came back, did some minor line edits, and I was good to go. Other stuff I've gone over like 5 or 6 times. So sometimes it's right there and it works. Other times it's a very tedious process. Down to even playing with like I'm really detailed about like the language and stuff and the word choice, and it's just the way that my brain works, the way I write. And I sometimes even try to play with like syllables and just like the flow of like every word in a sentence, just because otherwise it just feels awkward to me and I can't let it go.
That is so interesting. Like, because it's just very funny to hear, because I've seen like so many quotes. I have a bunch written, like, I had the physical version, so I did like highlighter tabs, which was good. I'm not going to read them because I'll just butcher it. But that's always a question I like asking, because sometimes like you get to something and read it and it's like, fuck yeah, like, or that just cries something, especially like the books that I love, and I did love this book, have so many times in it where it's just like, the way we talk about music, I'm always like, when Led Zeppelin recorded Stairway to Heaven and they finished, do you think they were like, yeah, or kind of just like, well, we need to twiddle with the flute solo at the beginning a little bit.
Yeah, so I get what you're saying, like completely. There's the song "Alive" by Pearl Jam.
Yeah,
their guitarist did that in one lick, in one take.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. Like my brain can't comprehend it.
Yeah, and that was one where the band I read Chris Cornell's biography, and that was where the band stood around and was like, "That's it. Like we're using that. That was perfect."
That is insane. It's being pointed out that Led Zeppelin used recorders. I feel like that's a lie. Um, there's no way that was a recorder at the beginning, but whatever. I digress. I'm wrong. Um, one of the other things that I definitely wanted to ask about, because it had such that underlying doom to the story, the cult that is bringing the demons back. We were talking about that fire scene in the village, and the underlying threat of the demons was one thing. The cult bringing them back is another thing. But how did you balance having those threats from a supernatural level to dealing with humans in that village that were just as dangerous as those demons? Like, they were really, and again, I'm not spoiling anything, but there was a little bit there where they were in a rock and a hard place and didn't know where to turn. So how did you go about having such a high threat level all the time and you never knew where it was coming from?
I think it's just a symptom of the world. Because of the overarching threat of of the demons and the cultists that are like working alongside them. That basically makes everybody scared. And when people are scared, they can do cruel and terrible things. And that's why you see it with like the commoners and the peasantry on a small scale, as in with the Fire Village. And that's why you see it from the kings. That's why they're all selfish and paranoid and can't trust each other, and no one is willing to budge or give an inch because of the fear of betrayal from one of the other two. Um, and so that was definitely something I wanted to include, where there's multiple layers or different kinds of evil, multiple layers of danger, um, and a lot of it is driven by greed and fear.
Yeah, and it kind of mirrors real life, especially the backdoor politics in this book, which I feel like goes very underspoken because the demons are such a visceral threat. They're all over the place. You know, Jin and Shura are yelling at each other all the time. Internal conflicts between both of them in the POVs. But one thing that is very understated is those different emperors and rulers of the lands trying to come to terms with, yes, we agree these demons need to get, the cult needs to get stopped, the demons need to get killed, but you're not going through my land. Like, you took this from me 200 years ago. What is going on here? But
Yeah.
what made you want to add that into that as well?
I wanted to play with the idea of, similar to Game of Thrones, how the rulers are all squabbling in the face of a giant existential threat. I wanted to have something like that because again, I think it's true to life, um, and I wanted to. I didn't just want a like a good guys versus demons, like everybody's on the same side, hunky dory. I might write a different series, different type of story with more clear lines between good and evil, but in this case, I wanted to show that just because you're on the side of the humans doesn't mean you're necessarily a good guy. And I wanted to show that like some of the biggest cruelties can come at the hands of people who should be allies and stand side by side with each other, but because of differences big and small, they can't or refuse to do so.
Yeah, that's actually a really great. I never even kind of connected it with the Game of Thrones, where White Walkers, this should be our priority, and it's just like, no, I was betrothed to this person, and now I'm not. Like, I'm not talking to you, but on a much grander scale. One of the things I wanted to ask, and again, this is going to be a spoiler prevention method on your end, with book 2, which again I hate asking people when's it coming, because I'm sure you want to just slap me right through the fucking screen. So I'm not going to do that. But with the way that this one left off, and like we just talked about with all of those different rulers, is book 2 going to be a little more focused on the political, aspect of things going on to defeat them, the demons and the cults in the end? Or are you still gearing more towards this is a demon slaying story?
So that's a great question. Book 2 is very much invested in the internal politics. So in the first book, you kind of get a taste of the politics between the three kingdoms, right? This one focuses very heavily on the internal politics of Oda's kingdom. And this one essentially, like, how do you mobilize an entire nation for war when half the people in power don't actually want to go to war? So you get a lot more of Grand Duke Saito, that scumbag. Yeah. So it's politics on a smaller scale, but it's in preparation, for what's hinted at at the end of book one. And I still found a way to work demons into the story, which was actually kind of a later addition. Because originally, what is now planned for books 2 and 3 was all going to be one book, and it was like over 700 pages, and I wasn't done fleshing it out. I'm like, okay, I have to split this in half. I have to split this, and then because of that, certain conflicts or arcs were then left out of book 2, which then was like, okay, well, now the demons need a bigger presence in book 2 because the way that I had decided to split it. So I actually had to like rework some new plot lines in, some different antagonists, so that it would still feel like it is still rooted in Japanese mythology. The demons are still a presence, but we're seeing them in a different environment. So it's less like overland action adventure hack and slash, and more like dark, seedy backroom politics. And you kind of get to see demons in a different, like, non-wilderness environment, if that makes sense.
No, that's awesome, because that's exactly what I was hoping for. So nice. And trying to pivot, and like you said, some things had to get dropped from book 2 to move to book 3. You have to add things to book 2. How do you go about plotting that? Like, the way that the characters are all going to be still just as complex, and we're living in their heads, we're watching like all their motivations, everything that's driving them. And how do you make that complexity kind of parallel the world building, where you did such a good job in book 1, where there were the characters and the world, and neither of them felt overwhelming. So how do you go about keeping that in your mind as the writer, to not have me go, I'm fucking confused, and pull it off so well?
I think it's important, no matter like what you're trying to convey, to drip information in slowly and just give it time to breathe, and also the type of information that you're introducing. Like, if you introduce like 2 or 3 characters, it might be like a few pages later might be an appropriate time to introduce something about like the environment or the city or the politics or history, but probably not a good time to introduce another 3 characters, right? Because then it's too much. So in this case, like, I expand heavily on the politics. Some of that is done through exploring some of the noble families a little more in depth. For example, there are multiple Saitos in this book now. So you get to meet the whole Saito clan. You introduce a few other noble clans, so like smaller sub factions, within Oda's kingdom. There are different kinds of demons, that hopefully still reinforce like the overall mythological backbone. And then I did something cheap, and at one point I give Shura a book, and so there's a couple historical passages, because there's a question that she has that she's trying to research. And so that's my really cheap tactic of, when I want to info dump, I do it through the eyes of a curious character who is trying to find an answer to something that is very important for her and for the plot. So those are all little strategies.
That's good ways of doing it, because it never came off, kind of gratuitous info dumping. Question from Bill coming in.
I love this question.
It's a good question. Do you ever run into trouble with your outline, since you alternate POVs every chapter?
Yeah, about 4 or 5 times every project, I'm like, why the fuck did I commit to alternating POVs? There are some chapters, and I had to struggle to make them work, but I either had to condense or split, and essentially come up with like a new Jin chapter or a new Shura chapter to successfully split the other one. Or sometimes wanting to show events through one set of eyes or the other. So I've had to do a lot of like Tetris and behind the scenes rearranging, and I'm glad it came through. It makes sense. But there were times when the structure of the book, it was a complete mess. and I had to either add or remove stuff, entire chapters, switch stuff around to make it flow.
Interesting. Yeah, that's something you never really think about. I mean, I guess you guys think about it as the author, but me, I'm just like, well, that worked. Like, that must have been easy. But when you're
If we're doing a good job, you shouldn't think about it, right? Which is which is good. So I'm glad to hear that.
yeah, no, it definitely worked. And I also wanted to ask because you were mentioning in book 2 that you're going to be introducing some different types of demon. Um, without being spoilery or anything, is that going to be kind of based in Japanese, that Japanese mythology, or is this more original creation type thing, or a hybrid?
Still very much rooted in Japanese mythology. And like in one case, there I feel comfortable saying that there's another big like major antagonist that's a demon, and that's like a singular entity, but it's based off of an existing thing. And then there's another one where I kind of like merged another one on the back of that. And then there's just like one or two other small ones I introduced. So there are I don't introduce like 20 demons in this book like I do in the first one, but I didn't think I had to because I already introduced 20 demons, and I still want to leave a couple surprises for the third one. But this is just me continuing to build out that arsenal. And one of the other major mythological pieces I added was you see a good amount more of backstory from the actual gods. So if you remember, like Jensui is like the progenitor of the demons, and so you see his birth, you see him in like as a young god, like as a child. So you see a lot more of the actual gods that were predecessors of the demons, and so that's a way that I kind of kept building the mythology without just throwing more random monsters into the fold.
Very cool. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense, and is a good way of doing it. The actually talking of gods, one of the other things that I was curious about, because like you said at the beginning, you wanted to have the main characters be a little special and everything like that with their divine bloodline. But how'd you go about making them special and not overpowering? Like they're overpowering compared to singular demons or singular humans, but they can get in just as much trouble if they're kind of swarmed. And it must have been in the back of your head very easy to just go, well, they're just badass. They have, god bloodlines. Like they'll take them out. But when they were in danger, you kind of felt just how in danger they were. So how did you make them level with what was going on in the book and not Superman?
I mean, that was the effect I was going for. Like I wanted, particularly Jin. Like I wanted like a single demon to not be too much of a problem for him, but if there's several, he's still in a lot of trouble. And sure, to a lesser extent. And I think in the backstory I mentioned that the bloodlines weakened with every generation, and there's several generations removed from like the god who like spawned the initial line. So that's kind of like the in-world explanation for for why they're like divine blooded, but can still very much mortal, can still be killed. And then trying to I don't know if there's like a term for this, but almost like combat scaling. Like you see them in their first fight, and you're getting a feel for them. Like, okay, they're fighting these snake demons. Like in the first chapter, like Jin rips one's guts out with his bare hands. You're like, okay, this guy is probably pretty badass, is what I'm getting, right? He kills 2 of the 4, right? But then you see him get very badly wounded, but it's by something that almost kills another super powerful creature, right? It's not like in that first chapter. So it's just like when you show like the fight and the consequences of it, you're starting to inform the readers like what people's strengths and capabilities are, and then you build from there. And then and then you see him fight just a group of humans, and you're like, oh my god, you just took out like 6 people, like it was nothing.
Yeah.
So then and then over time, the people get a sense for how strong that character is, and then you can play with. Now they understand their strengths. Now you can play with the stakes. Now, when they're trapped in a shed surrounded by 30 demons, you're like, oh, they're probably actually fucked here, even though they're strong. So that's kind of how you build that out.
Yeah, and that worked out really well because there was like, kind of like I said multiple times where you're like, they're fucked. And, that is a very well done job of doing that. Because, like I said, it's very easy to kind of fall into that trap of just like, well, he'll cast down fire and get his way out of here or something like that if that was the route you were thinking. So I'm very glad that wasn't.
Yeah, I also try. I'm not gonna like make up random special abilities for them. Like I show what they have in the first fight. That's what they have. And I think there's a moment where Shura basically uses one of her powers pretty twice in close proximity, and and the second one's way weaker, right? But it's like just a little bit, and that's supposed to be like a oh holy shit moment. Like that's really stretching the boundaries of what's possible for them because it was a moment of sheer desperation, you know.
Yeah. And
So
what
that's like,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying that's like about as far as I would ever take it, which I equate that to similar of like a physical fighter using like the very last bit of their strength to do something.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to ask the powers that you gave them. How did you decide on those?
Just I don't want to get like spoiler or anything, but basically, I wanted something that's like dangerous but not overpowering, right? So that's why Shura can sense demons. That's why she basically has a 1x very powerful stun grenade use, and and that's why Jin can like he can basically set anything he touches on fire, but he can't throw it. He can't really manipulate it outside of like it's his hand or whatever he's grabbing onto that'll channel the fire. And then he typically uses it actually to see invisible demons. So I wanted like a clever way to use that, not just like burn everything, because then that would feel real like that would feel kind of cheap. And even like with the fire, I needed it to be kind of unpredictable. Where you notice like if Wallace is in the melee with him, he doesn't use it because the fire could kill Wallace. So it has to be something that like he only uses it if he's by himself back into a corner. So that's why he doesn't even always use it when he's fighting human opponents. So he built in limitations.
Mm-hmm. That makes definitely a lot of sense. I thought Shura's ability was really cool. Just the again, I don't think it's a spoiler. We kind of touched on it there, but just the way the blood would start tingling. That's how she would be able to see if anything was coming near. And there were some moments in time where it was very well done, where she was surrounded by enemies and they just happened to not be demons. Because there was one or two times, especially in like the early middle of the book, where one or two things happened, and I actually messaged Bill on the side, and I was like, "I got fucking got! Like I got! I can't believe it!" Like me and him have our own little thing where we were just talking back and forth throughout it, and I'm not spoiling anything, but there were certain characters where it was just like something's gonna happen. I'm calling this now. I'm predicting this, and then he would message me and just be like, "What % done are you?" And I'm like, 50. And he's like, "I can't say it yet." And when I finally got past the point, he was just like, "I was wrong." So it was very funny that you have like a mini fan club going on.
That's great to hear, man. I'm one of those people where like I like to show people movies, and then just and like see their reaction. Like I get a kick out of that, and so it's cool. It's cool to know that you guys are like behind the scenes, like freaking out a little bit.
Oh yeah, I messaged him as soon as I was done. I was just like, "Yeah, we were so wrong," and he's like, "I know, but we shouldn't have been, but we definitely should have been." But it was just very funny the way that all of that was working. As far as movies go, I'm gonna pivot to that now. What type of movie buff are you?
I like a lot of like medieval and historical fiction, fantasy, war films, stuff like that. A lot of drama. No surprise there.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I watch like pretty frequently. I'll watch like Fury, Lone Survivor, Last Samurai, Braveheart, Last Mohicans, stuff like that.
They're all so good. I love every one of them. Fury is really underrated. Like, even by me, I feel like I saw that in theaters and walked out, and I was like, I don't think I like that. And then when it finally came out again, I watched it. I was like, older you is an idiot, because that was awesome, but very underrated. And it actually kind of reminds me of the book where it's very internal conflicty, very this is the tank team working together, and the four guys. Your story has four characters all working together. The internal conflicts, rise, and people are yelling and screaming at each other. I never really thought about it, but it's kind of funny to see the parallels.
It's funny you say that because that was actually I watch that fairly often, especially when I'm in heavy drafting mode, because it's so good at like atmospheric, like isolated storytelling in a rough environment. And so even though it's World War II versus fantasy, it's one of those things that, like, for all the reasons you just brought up, that I do watch that pretty frequently when I just need a dose of like getting the vibes that I'm looking for. That's one of my go-tos.
Nice. Yeah, that's very funny. I never actually, considered that, but now looking at it, it's like, yeah, it really is so well done. Like in a vortex, watching those people, bounce off each other.
Yeah, like the moments where like the guys scream for him to like to load the shell, and the sergeant's trying to like to sight it, and they're screaming at the bow gunner to shoot the guy that's right in front of them, so he doesn't like hit them with a Panzerfaust. It's like that, and that's like that level of intensity is like and like the teamwork at play. Like that's what I tried to do in the larger fights where you have the four of them, where like Fang jumps like over one of them to tackle like an invisible demon, and then someone like spots something and it's like shoot that over there, and and like they're all like desperately like directing each other, but like still making it work. I pulled a lot of inspiration from Fury and other movies like that, which was very very intense, like multi-layered combat.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm definitely a big movie guy, so it's always funny to hear that. What other kind of different medias have influenced you as a writer?
Someone's dropping out. I'll see ya. Thanks for coming by.
That's ZB, just with a terrible name.
Oh, that is. What's up, man? Thanks for making it in. You guys about other media?
Yeah, video games, movies. What kind of brought you to this?
To like just to like grimdark and like writing in general, or
Yeah.
I mean, when I was younger, it was definitely books, and then like books, movies mostly. Like I grew up playing a lot of video games. Like I was pretty highly ranked in like Warcraft 3 for a while, and I played a lot of that, and like Dota. Grew up on Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy 7 before doing that. So even then, I was always like really interested in like medieval worlds, right? And then I saw Lord of the Rings Fellowship when I was like 9 or 10, and it just blew my mind. I was like, they have movies about this? Like, this is crazy. Back then, it was all like cheesy 90s, like, cheesy 90s flicks. And, so that was the first, like, really, like, epic scale fantasy that I saw.
If you don't mind me asking, how old are you? Because I think I saw that at the same age.
I'm 34.
35. All right, right on.
Yeah.
It's funny how that works. You see that in theaters, and it's just like, and I'm a fan of this forever now.
So I mean, some of those movies, like I'll say Lord of the Rings, for example, like that really was a defining cinematic moment for our generation. Similar to how I imagine like putting myself in high school or early college, having it when like Marvel was taking off and like ending with Infinity War and Endgame. I don't really watch anything beyond that, but that's something where like everybody who is 14 to like 22 probably has like a similar communal experience with those movies. Like I was like old for that, and I still thought it was awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was way late to the Marvel party. What's that?
I said we caught the tail end of that Endgame saga.
Yeah, and I was late to the party. Like I didn't watch those movies for years when they first came out.
It's funny how that works. One of those, just a big thing will just drag you in and kind of influence your taste for everything going forwards. It's pretty funny how that works. But
especially if you see at a certain age, it's like formative,
Yeah, it's very fun. I remember skipping school to go see Return of the King, and that was like, whoa, oh my god. But yeah, it's funny how that works. And again, like I said earlier, I'm not trying to ask, but as far as book 2, how far along are you? What kind of timeline are you thinking?
So I'm on the last draft before beta readers, and I am pretty confident that there's that the beta reader feedback is not going to necessitate any major overhauls. So I'm sure they'll find some stuff, and I'm sure I'll have like a month or two of edits to do on that. But like beta feedback for ShadowBane, I had to write 100 extra pages in because I took a big risk with the pacing, and it did. And people were like, it didn't work. I tried a time jump instead of like the cave arc. That was not in the version I sent to betas. Now it's one of my favorite parts of the book.
Yeah.
But they're like, there's too much character change after this. Like, this needs to be shown, not told. The villain needs a bigger presence. And I was like, okay, if I write an extra 100 pages, I can fix all this. And so then that's what I did. In this case, I think I understand. It's my second book, so I understand structure and storytelling a little better going into it. So I think I have avoided major like structural pitfalls. So I think that I think the feedback will be a lot easier to work through. And then after that, it's ready for a pro editor. So I'm planning on putting it out next year, sometime between summer and fall.
Nice. Hell yeah.
And what's that?
Oh no, sorry. Go ahead. My screen froze.
So yeah, summer, fall release for the sequel, and then the audiobook was supposed to be out this fall, but my narrators had some stuff go on in their life, and so that's being delayed until next year. But the audiobook for ShadowBane will be out as well. So 2026 is going to be a busy year for me.
Hell yeah, that's awesome though. Congrats in advance, and whenever the ARC sign up is there, consider me. This is my official sign up, but I'll do it properly once you have a link.
Perfect. Yeah, I'd be happy to get you a copy.
Awesome. Yeah, my laptop is completely screwing up right now, and the battery is dying. Normally I don't pull the curtain back like that, but it's shutting off. But
yeah, you're getting a little choppy.
A little brutal, but yes, I wanted to thank you again for joining me. This was again one of the more easy reach outs that I've ever had to do, just because I'm such a fan of this book. And again, every person I talk to also enjoys it, and I'm going to be pushing it for a long time. So I'm excited to see book 2 and everything else that you come out with as well, because I thought this, as far as there have been a lot of good debuts that I've read recently, and I think this is probably tip top of all of them. This is very underrated and very fucking amazing. So you should be very proud of yourself for coming out and just knocking it out of the gates with this.
I really appreciate that, man. Really, like I consider myself a new writer, so it's nice to hear that feedback, because it gets quiet sometimes.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense, but you just got to, I don't have to tell you guys to keep on just crushing. Every person I know has, just is grinding and putting out good stuff. And I am, always going to be in your guys' corner. And I loved this. Like I said, I could just keep gushing over it. But again, I just wanted to thank you for coming on and spending your night with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I had a great time. I see you guys in the chat. Thank you so much for dropping by. It's always fun to do this. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a good chat tonight with some good questions. So I appreciate everyone in there as well. And yeah, we are going to sign off now. But again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for everyone in the chat. And we will be seeing you guys soon.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Ooh, I'm mega frozen.